Cool. So now it's my turn to go. See if you can see my screen. All good?
Yes.
All right. So the Orioles are going to get the 1 seed. And obviously they're going to get the first round bye right into the ALDS. And you picked the Texas Rangers here.
Yes.
Coin flip. Definitely a coin
Right.
flip. I think this is a huge battle between the Rangers and the Rays. And even though Tropicana Field is, not a great home field advantage by any means, I'm not a fan of how the Rangers walked into the playoffs. I don't like it.
Right.
They were far ahead in the AL West for a while, and then they blew it. Like, they completely blew it, and that kind of blew my mind because I was like, I think there was probably maybe only a month of the season where like they weren't number one. Like, they lost it in the last month. So I'm not a huge fan of that, especially going into the postseason. So I'm going to roll with Tampa Bay here. A little AL East action in the ALDS.
Yeah.
As far as the Minnesota Twins and Blue Jays matching up, I liked your pick here with the Twins. I'm also going to pick the Twins here. Basically for the same exact reasons. You're going to get 3 home games in Minnesota if you need 3. Against a Blue Jays team that really doesn't hit super well. I think Bo Bichette's probably their best hitter. And like you said, if I personally, I would prefer to see the Twins here, so I might be a little biased. Just because, I don't want to see an AL East team. But right. I let the Rays get through, so I'm gonna knock out the Blue Jays here and put Minnesota for basically the exact same reasons you gave.
Yeah, I almost had Blue Jays, but I changed my mind when I filled it out the second time. So,
but honestly, I would say these are kind of all coin flips because each of these teams has a strength against the other.
Yeah, especially 2 out of 3 series. Anything could happen. You could put the Nationals against the Braves, and they could win it 2 out of 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just such a toss-up.
Yeah. All right, so that sets the ALDS. So now for the NL. You kind of talked about it already. The Marlins do match up well with Philadelphia, just competitively. But the Phillies have that home field advantage at Citizens Bank Park. Hopefully, might be able to get to the Citizens Bank Park this postseason. If the Phillies kind of make a run, I think that'd be really fun to get out there, just because we're so close. Right. But even though the Marlins, like I said, won, in the head-to-head between the Phillies and the Marlins, the Marlins did win more, but it's very close. I trust the Phillies in the playoffs, especially after last year. Bryce, Trey, Castellanos, Schwarber, Real Muto in the lineup. You know what I mean? It's really hard for me to pick against Philadelphia. And the Marlins, they haven't really proven it much. The last time they were in the postseason was the shortened year. It's, and every other time they've been in the playoffs besides that, they won the World Series, but that was, many, many years ago. So I'm going to choose Philadelphia here. And then in this 3-6 matchup, I think is probably the matchup that people are sleeping on the most. I think this is going to be fun. The Brewers are a team. The Brewers are a really interesting team because their offense kind of blows, right? They don't score a lot of runs, but they might have the best pitching staff that would match up with a team like Atlanta.
Yeah, I think they have the best ERA in the league overall.
That's what I'm saying.
But like I said, I'm just rolling with the D-backs. We gotta keep going.
And they only won 92 games in a division where they were fighting with teams like Pittsburgh and my Cincinnati Reds and your Cubs. So I am gonna roll with the Brewers here. So I'm gonna deviate a little bit. We had the same pick. We had same picks in each except for one. So I'm gonna roll with the Brewers. You rolled with the Diamondbacks here, and then I took the Rays, and you took the Rangers in the AL, right? Okay.
Correct.
So in the ALDS, we got Baltimore and we got Tampa Bay, and this is a very, very interesting matchup if we get it. Just because I think I think people are sleeping. Like you're saying, people are sleeping on the Dodgers. The Rays almost won 100 games.
That's true.
That's true. They only lost 2 more games in Baltimore, and everyone's on the Baltimore train, right?
Right.
But Baltimore kind of been the talk of the season. They score a lot of runs. They're really fun. They're really young. But the Rays lineup, deep, balanced, powerful lineup. They got a good pitching staff. I'm going to roll with the Rays here. And that might be a hot take. But, neither team is super experienced here. But I like the Rays lineup a lot. The more and more I've looked at the bracket, I think the Rays might be a top 5 team in baseball that we're just kind of forgetting about.
Yeah. One thing I do want to add is for the Rays, do you really have home field advantage playing at the Trop? Like, we'll see.
Really.
This is kind of their first real postseason because last year was who did they play?
They played on the road. They played Cleveland.
Yeah, and then the year before
they lost in the wild card.
Yeah, and then they went to the World Series, but that was COVID year. So this is the first. We'll see if there's actually gonna be fans showing up to Tropicana. Yeah, go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like they're the 4 seed. They're gonna be a wild card team, right? So they're gonna be playing on the road, which kind of might play to their advantage. Just because it's not like playing at home. They don't play in an environment like Philadelphia, right? Where the fans are obnoxious and crazy. So this Twins-Astros matchup, we had the same matchup here. I like how these 2 teams match up. We talked about in the last episode how if we saw the Twins and Astros meet in the playoffs, we wouldn't necessarily know who to pick. But now, with the Astros getting the 2 seed, it's still tough because the Astros don't play super well at home. But I am going to trust them here. Over a team like the Minnesota Twins, like you said, experience matters, right? They've been there. They've done that. It's hard for me to look at a team like the Twins and be like, yeah, like this team can go toe-to-toe with the Houston Astros. I think this might go 4 or 5 games, but I'm going to pick the Astros. And then the matchup, probably the postseason, like you said, is this Philadelphia Phillies and Atlanta Braves matchup. Would really love to see this. We kind of talked about this earlier. Would love if this was a best of 7. Like, we want to see 7 games of this, right? But if you're going to give us 5, I'm not going to be too upset with that. I like the Phillies in a best of 5 versus a best of 7 with Atlanta. For basically all the same reasons you listed, this Braves team's different. I have to pick them. I think it probably goes 4 or 5, like I said, with the Twins and Astros, just because when, the Phillies are home like that. I know that Atlanta and the Phillies played last year in the playoffs, and the Phillies were able to win games both in Atlanta and at home, and the Braves really struggled in Philadelphia. But I think this Braves team's a little different just across the board offensively. I don't know if Philadelphia will be able to keep up. Both teams have a lineup from hell. They're both nasty. Both lineups are really good. But again, at the end of the day, the Braves have the better one. I think we can all agree there. And then we've got the Brewers and the Dodgers. And you've been talking a lot about how people are kind of sleeping on the Dodgers. And Vegas loves the Dodgers. Vegas has the Dodgers has the second best odds to win the World Series behind Atlanta. Rightfully so. They won 100 games. But their pitching staff really does worry me a lot. And I think in every postseason, there's got to be one upset, right? You got to have one team that you see getting upset. And I know I mentioned that the Brewers aren't great offensively. But if their pitching staff can keep this Dodgers lineup contained, I think that the Milwaukee Brewers can beat them. Wow. I do. I'm going to pick the Brewers here because I think if the Brewers can score 3 or 4 runs a game, I think that they can contain the Dodgers. Now, granted...
That's a good point. That's a good point.
If the Dodgers walk into, Milwaukee, or regardless, doesn't even matter where the game's played, and Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts are, batting 1-2 and they give up 2 home runs right off the bat, the game's over. Right? Because I don't think that you can fall behind to a team like the Dodgers. No, I think, they're going to play downhill, so if they get a lead on you, they're just going to build it. But if you can contain them, I think that the Brewers are probably have the best shot to kind of contain a lineup that contains like a Mookie Betts and a Freddie Freeman. So I'm going to go with the Brewers there.
I like it.
Yep. In the ALCS, we've got the Tampa Bay Rays and the Houston Astros, right? And I really don't like either of these teams. I hate to have both these teams here. Yeah. But, the Astros, you can't really even be mad just because, they weren't even dominating the AL West. The Rangers gave it to them and set them up with a matchup with the Twins. So, it is what it is there. But like I said with Tampa Bay, I like their pitching. They don't really have a home field, which worries me. But it might play to their advantage, and I like their lineup a lot. Sneaky good lineup. Almost won 100 games this year. And I'm picking the Tampa Bay Rays to go to the World Series in the AL.
Nice. All right.
And then in the NL, like I said earlier, I think that the Brewers probably have the best pitching staff that can contain a team like the Dodgers and the Braves, right? But I just don't see the Atlanta Braves not making it to the World Series, right? I think it's a huge upset if the Atlanta Braves were to lose and not make it to the World Series. I think if they were to lose, it would come at the hands of the Philadelphia Phillies over the Brewers, because I just think if any team's going to beat the Braves, I think it's the Phillies, even though I have Atlanta winning that series. So I am going to pick the Atlanta Braves here just because they're the Atlanta Braves. And then in the World Series, I am going to pick the Atlanta Braves as well, just because, the lineup from hell, like I said. I don't know the number of home runs that this team has hit over the course of the entire season, but it was a lot, and a lot of dudes were hitting a lot of home runs. So it's really hard to pick against Atlanta. It's kind of boring that we both picked the same, but we kind of had different, journeys to get to that point.
Right. Yeah, I do have one question for you. I know the Braves just won the World Series 2 years ago in 2021, but that core is kind of gone, right? Because they had Dansby, Freddie, Acuna was hurt that year, and then who was their third baseman? It wasn't Matt Olson at that time either. So their core now doesn't have that same experience, even though it was only 2 years ago. Does that concern you at all?
I can understand why it would concern someone, but if you've watched this team this year, top to bottom, I can you legitimately name a team that is like as good as this team or even close? Like legitimately, that's the thing for me is like probably the Dodgers and the Orioles are probably.
I would say the Dodgers. I would say the Dodgers could compete with.
But would you say that the Dodgers are like really? You know what I mean? Like it's
close.
I don't know. Like I can't see a team that's better than this.
Right.
I think it's a huge upset if they lose the World Series. I'll say that on the air right now.
Yeah.
I think
there's a lot. There is a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure for them to win the World Series, and they're heavy favorites. So,
and that might get to them too. But
yeah,
and like I said, if any team's going to knock off this Phillies team, I think it would be the Philadelphia Phillies. And again, with the Dodgers, I don't really trust them in the playoffs. I don't like their pitching staff. Yeah. They're kind of old, and historically, the 1 year that they won the World Series that we can remember was the COVID year, right? So it's kind of a crapshoot. So there's my bracket.
All right. There we go. Brady, if you want to stop sharing your screen, this could exit out here.
Yep, you're good.
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. We're also going to have a Phillies preview coming right up after this with a special guest. And so, those are our postseason brackets. We'll post them we'll probably post an image of them on Twitter or something too, so you guys can go check them out. And tell us what we got wrong, tell us what we got right, tell us what we got right, and tell us your predictions on the World Series. Or postseason as a whole. Deuces.